So this afternoon I'm going to do another mini tutorial on one of the other techniques that I've used in my Sew for the Soul, which is patchwork and paper piecing. So we're going to start off using a hexagon shape. I've got this example of a vintage piece of paper piecing. It doesn't have the paper, it's got Bondo web on the back, so I think they must have ironed on a covering. It's actually got some of the tacking stitches still in there, which is absolutely lovely. This is technically amazing. I don't profess to be a quilter or technically proficient at paper piecing, but because we're just using small sections and just using the hexagon as a shape, it's worked for me. So if you are somebody that knows how to do this technically well, I'll apologise straight away just in case I'm not quite correct, but hopefully this will just give you a little bit of information as to how you could do it. There's different ways that you can create your hexagon. You could go old school. So I've just got some photocopy paper here, and just using a compass and a pencil, if you draw yourself a circle, and this will just give you a template to start drawing around. So I've drawn my circle. Don't change the radius of your compass and just place the point on the outside of the circle and just create an arc, and then you put the point on the crossing of your circle and just work your way around the circle. This is old school. So if you're really struggling and you don't have any other way of creating a hexagon, this is one way that you can do it. So I've got a circle there, and then the radius has just been marked on. And then basically all you'll do is, with a ruler, is the crossing points on the circumference. Feels like a maths lesson rather than a textile lesson. You just join up those lines, join the lines where the crossing point is, you will end up with your hexagon. So that's just one way if you're really struggling and you don't have any means of creating any hexagons. So you can cut that out, and then that'll be used as a template. I cheated ever so slightly, and on my computer program in PowerPoint, when you go to shapes, you can just draw a hexagon and you can create lots of different sizes. I have seen from some of the photos on the internet that some people have got die cutting machines that have got the hexagons, and they can cut out the fabric and the paper. Makes your job so much easier, and you've just got all the bits and pieces. But that's basically just getting those paper pieces together. You then need to collect yourself some fabric. I tend to find that nice thin fabrics are some of the nicest ones to use. So I've got a nice yellow here. This one is from my friend Jane, who I mentioned in a previous video. She gave me some fabric the other day when I happened to pop down and see her, socially distancing, of course. Just dropped her a couple of bits off at home, and I got a lovely piece of fabric. She thinks it was dyed with turmeric or something, but it is absolutely gorgeous. So I'm just going to do a couple of pieces made out of that. So if you get your hexagon, pop it onto your fabric, and then I pin it to hold it in place. Make your life a little bit easier and just trim an edge around your hexagon, your piece of paper. This is another one a little bit like Suffolk Puffs, that you can have quite a few made on an evening, and then you've got them ready again in a little box. So I've now got my piece of paper with the fabric around the edge. So what I'm going to do now is some big tacking stitches just to hold it in place. So I've got a thread. You can use any thread. I've just got one of my Perlay cottons. So what you're going to do is fold that over the piece of paper. Just give it a little bit of a finger press so it holds it in place, and you're just going to do a big tacking stitch. Okay, really nice and big. Turn it around, just move the pin in a little bit, get your fabric and fold that over again. Press it with your finger, just hold it in place, and just do another big tacking stitch. Once you've done a couple, you usually take your pin out. Don't forget to take your pin out. There's nothing worse than doing all this and then realising you've left your pin into your piece of paper, and just keep working your way around. Just finger press, hold it in place. Nice big tacking stitches. Even though the sample that I've got, the vintage sample, it had the tacking pieces in, I tend to take them out afterwards. So just keep working your way around, trying to get it as close to that piece of paper as you can. Through, round. And then you've gone all the way around the edge. So what you've then got is your piece of fabric really nicely wrapped around that piece of paper. Just tie it off. Which then doesn't need a knot or anything, because it's not going to stay in there really for very long, and it will hold. So just trim your thread. So that's the basis of creating your hexagons. When you've got quite a few of them made, then you can use them in lots of different ways. You can just put them on their own, just as a single shape. That's perfectly fine. But what's quite nice is to start joining them up. So to join your hexagons together, all you need to do is find a couple. If I'm working on a slightly bigger bit, I'll line them up and just work out a pattern to work from. But to join them together, you put them face to face, and then this time using a machine embroidery thread, a nice thin cotton thread. All you're going to do is you're going to go through the very edge of that piece of fabric. Okay, so I've just gone through the very edge. Oh, it helps if you've threaded your needle up properly and you've used the right side. Try again. Thread the needle. There we go. So I've got a knot in the end. Not got too long a piece of thread. You don't need that much because you're only going to stitch a tiny little bit. And if you've got to pull a lot of thread through, it just gets knotty. So I'm just catching the very edge and then come back across. So I'm just going in the same direction. Just a tiny little stitch. Go. And just work your way across. If you catch the paper, it doesn't matter. Pull that there. That's it. Okay, so I'm really just stitching this very edge, just catching that tiny bit. It's important that you do that because you want to be able to turn them back round and just see that the edges are caught. If you make it too big, you end up with a big lumpy join, and you just want to keep it nice and small. So just working my way across. So I tend to do a few of these, or I have been doing a little bit like with my Suffolk puffs. Just making a few of them in the colours of the fabric that I'm using. Because the idea with the challenge is that you can go back, you can add into, as we do new sections, you can bring old bits in. So it's quite nice sometimes to have some bits made, because then you can just add them as you're going along rather than having to stop and make them again. So get to the edge. Just tie it off, little loop, couple of little stitches through, and trim. And then you can open it up, and you've got a really nice, hardly seen little stitch just joining the edge together. So you can just carry on, you can keep adding bits. If you were going to do something, turn it around. No, that doesn't match. Try and get it so there's different colours there. What you would do is turn it that way and stitch, and then manipulate it a bit that way, and you just have to twist it around. That's probably not the technical way to do it. There probably is an easier way, but because I'm not going much bigger than those sorts of shapes, and I'm not doing a big block like that, I don't tend, you could do the flower shape if you wanted to and add all the bits on and then do your joins, but because I'm just doing small bits and pieces, I'm not too worried about that. So once I've got those bits done and I'm ready to start stitching it on, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to iron them. So I would get one of my pieces, try that one. This isn't my ironing board, it's just technically just there, just so that I've got something just to use so that I can iron. Okay, so just press, and really all that is it just makes sure that all those edges are really, really nice and sharp. I then take the paper and the tacking stitches out, and because I'm going to use it straight away, nothing seems to come undone. Again, like I said right back at the beginning, I'm not a technical quilter, so this probably is not the right way. It's just sort of my way, but for the little bits, like I've said, that I'm doing, it works. So just removing those little tacking stitches, just trim those and pull them out. Get rid of that one. You can just trim off your little knot at the end, or just pull it out. Trim off the other one. I think my irons look like they could do with a bit of a clean. I don't know about anybody else's irons, but they do get very, very gunky after a while. And because of the situation that we're in at the moment, I haven't been able to get hold of any baking paper or greaseproof paper, so hopefully I'll be able to get some shortly. So when we've done that and you've pulled out your tacking stitches, you can just gently just pull that open and then just pull out your paper pieces, and because you've ironed it, all your little edges will just go back in. Then when it comes to stitching it onto your piece, you work out where you want it to go. So I've added some extra bits onto my Sew for the Soul because I'm getting ready for this week's video that I'm going to start filming probably tomorrow maybe. So if you're going to start attaching these, decide where they want to go, and basically I pin them in place. I don't know if these are going to go here, but I'm not actually going to stitch them down. It's just really just to show you what I would do, and then I'll probably take them off again with a thin thread. So you've got your cotton thread. Let's tie a knot in the back of it. Again, don't use too much cotton. It just makes it very difficult when you're working. So then to stitch this down, just start at one side, and again it's these really, really tiny stitches. So just coming up, catching the very edge. Really, these stitches, if you're doing them, you don't really want to be able to see them. That's what helps it blend in to the background. So then just another tiny stitch, just a little bit further along, and tack it down. So these stitches that I do all the way around the edge are tiny, and it just catches. I don't know how well you can see that, but I am just catching the very, very edge of that piece of fabric, just the very edge, and then straight onto the backing piece, so that you've got these tiny stitches that you can't really see. Work all the way around, and then you can start playing around with things. So the paper piecing that I've done on this section here, I've done a piece where there's 4 hexagons there, and then it sort of comes around as if it's going to do that flower, but I went off in one direction. And then just to make it a little bit more interesting, added a couple of hexagons, some single ones, so you can see a bit of your fabric behind as well. It just breaks it up ever so nicely. A double one here, but again I've left a gap between the hexagons so you can see the shape through, and then just popping a button on, just doing a pistol stitch and some bullion knots, and just really beginning to add lots of texture on the top. So I tend to overwork things. I will leave some areas where you can see one of the techniques that we've done, but I love this idea of layering up. It becomes really, really tactile. So over here I've mixed together 2 of the different techniques that we've been using. So I have added in some of the hexagons underneath, so I did a 3, pop some Suffolk puffs over the top, and then I've done these rows of straight stitch going around the shape just to really start building up again that texture and playing around just with the different techniques. So that's the paper piecing patchwork, lots of P's, loads of different ways of doing it. If you are a patchworker or a quilter, I'm really sorry if I haven't done that exactly technically correct, but for what we're doing, and if you're just wanting to have a go, it's a fairly straightforward way of working. Play with different size hexagons, lots of different types of fabric. I'd never go too thick with my fabrics because you just find that they become too bulky, and also if it's a really open weave fabric they can end up fraying. So cottons, I've got some linen that I've played around with, some really fine fabrics do work. Okay, so that's today's little video. That's most of the techniques I think covered now in video form that we've done so far, but like I say, I'm getting ready for the next video that should be coming up towards the end of this week, just to keep everybody going. I hope everybody has a lovely day. It's lovely and sunny outside, so I think I'll be going and doing my daily exercise and going for a walk shortly, seeing who's out. Not there'll be many people out because the world is very quiet at the moment, but it's just quite nice just to go outside and get some fresh air. So I will see you soon.